The internet is a vast, unpredictable place. Every day, billions of people upload, download, and share information, most of it harmless, some of it embarrassing. And a tiny fraction of it so explosive that it was never meant to see the light of day. But what happens when the secrets of the world's most powerful governments slip through the cracks? What happens when classified files hidden for decades behind layers of security suddenly appear online for anyone to see? Tonight, we're diving into the most shocking, mysterious, and downright terrifying government files that accidentally leaked online. Files that were never supposed to be public, files that changed the way we see our leaders, and files that, in some cases, vanished almost as quickly as they appeared. Before we begin, make sure you're subscribed and have notifications turned on. Because what you're about to hear isn't just a list of strange documents or conspiracy theories. These are real files, real leaks, and real consequences. Some of these stories have been quietly erased from the web, others have sparked international scandals, and a few have left behind more questions than answers. If you think you know what your government is hiding, think again. The truth is always stranger and more dangerous than fiction. Let's start with a story that sounds like the plot of a Hollywood thriller, but is 100% real. In 2013, a sleepy government contractor named Edward Snowden walked out of his office in Hawaii with a thumb drive full of secrets. What he unleashed on the world was a tidal wave of classified documents exposing the national security agencies, global surveillance programs. But what most people don't know is that, in the chaos that followed, a handful of files slipped out that even Snowden's closest allies never intended to release. These files, buried deep in encrypted archives, contain details about secret government programs, so sensitive that even mentioning their names was forbidden inside the NSA. For a few brief hours, these files were accessible to anyone with the right decryption key, and in that window, a handful of anonymous users downloaded them, copied them, and spread them across the dark web. What was in those files? Some say they revealed the existence of surveillance programs targeting not just foreign adversaries, but American citizens, journalists, and even members of Congress. Others claim the files included blueprints for cyber weapons, lists of undercover operatives, and evidence of secret deals with foreign intelligence agencies. The files vanished almost as quickly as they appeared, but not before a few screenshots and summaries made their way onto obscure message boards. The NSA never confirmed what was lost, but the agency's internal emails also leaked, showed panic, confusion, and a desperate scramble to contain the damage. For weeks, agents scoured the internet, trying to track down every copy, every mention, every trace. But as anyone who's ever tried to delete something from the internet knows, once it's out there forever. This wasn't the first time a government's secrets had slipped through its fingers, and it wouldn't be the last. In fact, accidental leaks have become almost routine in the digital age. Sometimes it's a bored employee with a grudge. Sometimes it's a hacker looking for fame. And sometimes it's just a simple mistake, a misconfigured server, a forgotten password, a file uploaded to the wrong folder. But the consequences are always the same. Secrets exposed, careers destroyed, and the public left wondering what else is being hidden. Take, for example, the infamous Vault 7 Inches leak. In early 2017, a mysterious group calling itself WikiLeaks began publishing thousands of documents from the CIA's most secretive hacking unit. The files detailed tools and techniques used to break into smartphones, computers, even smart TVs, but buried among the technical manuals and code snippets were a handful of files that should never have been online in the first place. These files included internal memos discussing operations in foreign countries, lists of targets, and even the names of undercover agents. The leak was so damaging that the CIA's entire cyber operations division was forced to shut down for months, and several foreign assets had to be relocated for their own safety. How did these files end up online? According to internal investigations, it was a combination of arrogance and carelessness. The CIA's hackers had grown so confident in their own security that they stored their most sensitive files on a shared server, protected by a password that hadn't been changed in years. When a disgruntled employee decided to copy the files and walk out the door, no one noticed until it was too late. By the time the agency realized what had happened, the files were already being traded on underground forums, sold to the highest, bidder, and, eventually, published for the world to see. But not all leaks are the work of whistleblowers or hackers. Sometimes the government itself is its own worst enemy. In 2018, a contractor working for the Department of Defense accidentally uploaded a trove of classified files to a public Amazon Web Services server. The files included detailed plans for a new generation of military drones, internal emails discussing vulnerabilities in U.S. missile defense systems, and even a list of passwords for secure government networks. For weeks, anyone with a web browser could access the files, no hacking required. The breach was only discovered when a security researcher stumbled across the server while searching for exposed databases. By then, the files had been downloaded hundreds of times, and the damage was done. What makes these leaks so terrifying isn't just the information they reveal. It's the realization that, in the digital age, no secret is truly safe. Governments spend billions of dollars on cybersecurity, hire the best experts, and build the most advanced defenses. But all it takes is one mistake, one disgruntled employee, or one clever hacker, and the walls come tumbling down. The files we've talked about so far are just the tip of the iceberg. In the next section, we'll dive even deeper into the world of accidental leaks, exploring files that expose secret experiments, hidden surveillance programs, and government cover-ups that were never meant to see the light of day. If you think the stories so far are unsettling, just wait. Because some of the most disturbing government leaks didn't just reveal secrets. They exposed entire hidden worlds, programs so secretive that even most officials inside the agencies had no idea they existed. And sometimes the truth that slips out is so bizarre, so unbelievable, that it blurs the line between fact and science fiction. One of the most infamous, accidental leaks in recent history came not from a whistleblower or a hacker, but from a simple, clerical error. In 2014, Freedom of Information Act request was filed by a journalist investigating the U.S. government's research into non-lethal weapons. The agency responded as required by law, but someone in the office made a critical mistake instead. Of redacting the most sensitive sections, they sent the journalist the unedited files. What landed in the reporter's inbox was a treasure trove of documents detailing secret Pentagon research into so-called psychotronic weapons, devices designed to manipulate the human mind, disrupt brainwaves, and even induce hallucinations. At a distance, the files described experiments with electromagnetic fields, infrasound, and chemical agents, all aimed at controlling or disabling enemy combatants without firing a single shot. Some of the research sounded like something out of a cold war spy novel. Attempts to create voice-to-skull technology that could beam messages directly into a person's head, or projects to develop pain rays that could incapacitate crowds with invisible energy. The documents even referenced classified Soviet research into telepathy and mind control, suggesting that the U.S. was racing to keep up with its adversaries in a shadowy war for the human mind. When the files hit the internet, they caused a sensation. Conspiracy theorists pounced, claiming proof of government mind control. Skeptics dismissed the documents as outdated or exaggerated, but the Pentagon's response was telling. Within hours, the files were pulled from official websites, and the agency issued a rare public statement admitting the release was a mistake. To this day, the full extent of the research remains unknown. But the accidental leak offered a rare glimpse into a world most people never knew existed. But the U.S. isn't the only government to have its secrets exposed by a simple error. In 2016, the British Ministry of Defense suffered a humiliating breach when a contractor accidentally uploaded a cache of classified files to a public cloud storage account. The files included detailed maps of military bases, lists of nuclear storage sites, and even contingency plans for responding to terrorist attacks. But the most shocking revelation was a set of documents outlining the UK's secret preparations for a doomsday scenario. A coordinated cyber attack that could cripple the country's power grid, financial system, and communications networks. Files revealed that the government had quietly built a network of underground bunkers, emergency command centers, and secure communication lines, all designed to keep the country running in the event of a catastrophic attack. The plans included instructions for rationing food and fuel, imposing martial law, and even evacuating the royal family to a secret location. For weeks, the files were accessible to anyone with a link, and by the time the breach was discovered, they had been downloaded by users around the world. The Ministry of Defense launched an immediate investigation, but the damage was done. The public now knew just how close the country had come to disaster and how fragile the systems designed to protect them really were. Sometimes the files that leak are so sensitive that even acknowledging their existence is a risk. In 2019, a trove of documents from the Chinese government appeared on a little-known file-sharing site. The files, which were quickly mirrored and spread across the internet, detailed the inner workings of China's mass surveillance programs in Xinjiang, including the use of facial recognition, artificial intelligence, and predictive policing to monitor and control the region's Uyghur population. The documents included internal memos, technical manuals, and even lists of individuals flagged for re-education. The leak was a bombshell, providing the first concrete evidence of what human rights groups had long suspected: a vast high-tech system of social control operating in secret and with almost no oversight. The Chinese government moved quickly to scrub the files from the web, and not before journalists and activists had downloaded and analyzed them. The revelations sparked international outrage, sanctions, and a wave of new investigations. But for the people whose names appeared in the files, the consequences were immediate and terrifying. Some disappeared, others were detained, and many went into hiding. Knowing that the government now had proof of their subversive activities, not all accidental leaks are so dramatic. But even the smallest slip can have massive consequences. In 2020, a low-level employee at a U.S. intelligence agency accidentally attached the wrong file to an internal email. Instead of a routine report, the recipient received a spreadsheet containing the names, addresses, and phone numbers of hundreds of undercover agents working overseas. The file was quickly deleted, but not before it was forwarded to several other employees, and eventually leaked to a foreign intelligence service. The breach forced the agency to pull dozens of operatives out of the field, shut down ongoing operations, and launch a massive internal review. Careers were ruined, missions were compromised, and the agency's reputation was left in tatters. These stories are just a few examples of how fragile the world's secrets really are. In an age where everything is digital, where files can be copied and shared in seconds, the line between secure and exposed is razor thin. And as we'll see in the next section, sometimes the most explosive leaks aren't about weapons or surveillance. They're about the hidden history of government cover-ups, experiments, and scandals that were never meant to be revealed. If you've ever wondered just how much of our history has been shaped by secrets, cover-ups, and classified experiments, you're not alone. For decades, governments around the world have gone to extraordinary lengths to keep their darkest chapters hidden from public view. But every so often, a file slips through the cracks, a forgotten box in a dusty archive, a misfiled document in a digital database, or a simple clerical error that exposes the truth. And when these secrets leak online, they don't just rewrite history. They force us to confront the uncomfortable reality that the people in power are often willing to do anything to protect their own interests. One of the most notorious accidental leaks in American history began with a single, unassuming file uploaded to a government website in the early 2000s. The file was supposed to be a routine environmental impact report, but buried deep in the appendices was a set of documents that had nothing to do with pollution or wildlife. Instead, they detailed a series of secret experiments conducted by the U.S. military during the Cold War. Experiments that involved exposing unwitting civilians to radioactive materials, biological agents, and chemical toxins. The files described how, in the 1950s and 60s, government scientists released clouds of radioactive particles over American cities, sprayed bacteria into subway systems, and even dosed hospital patients with experimental drugs, all without their knowledge or consent. The goal was to study the effects of these substances on large populations, to see how quickly they spread, and to develop countermeasures in case of a Soviet attack. But the human cost was staggering. Thousands of people were exposed to dangerous substances. Many suffered long-term health effects. Some died as a result. When journalists discovered the files, they sparked a national scandal. Congressional hearings were held, apologies were issued, and new laws were passed to prevent similar abuses in the future. But for the families of the victims, the damage was already done. The accidental leak forced the government to confront a chapter of its history it had tried to bury, and reminded the public that the truth has a way of coming out, no matter how hard you try to hide it. But the United States isn't the only country with skeletons in its closet. In 2015, a trove of files from the former East German secret police, the Stasi, was accidentally uploaded to a public database by a well-meaning archivist. The files included detailed surveillance reports, lists of informants, and transcripts of wiretapped conversations. But the most shocking revelations were the files documenting the Stasi's secret medical experiments on political prisoners. According to the documents, the Stasi collaborated with doctors to test new drugs, surgical procedures, and psychological techniques on inmates, often without anesthesia or proper consent. Some prisoners were subjected to sleep deprivation, sensory isolation, and even electroshock therapy, it all in the name of scientific progress. The files also revealed that the Stasi shared their findings with intelligence agencies in other countries, including the Soviet KGB and, shockingly, even some Western agencies during the height of the Cold War. The accidental leak of these files led to a wave of new investigations, lawsuits, and public outrage. Survivors came forward to share their stories, and the German government was forced to confront the legacy of its secret police. The files also raised uncomfortable questions about the extent to which other governments may have been complicit in similar abuses and whether there are still secrets waiting to be uncovered. Sometimes the files that leak are so sensitive that they disappear almost as quickly as they appear. In 2017, a cache of documents from the French intelligence service, the DGSE, briefly appeared on a file-sharing site before being taken down. The files included internal memos discussing covert operations in Africa, lists of informants, and evidence of secret arms deals with rebel groups. But the most explosive revelation was a set of documents detailing a covert program to monitor and influence foreign elections. A program that, according to the files, had been running for decades. The leak caused a political firestorm in France, with opposition parties demanding answers and the government scrambling to contain the fallout. The files were quickly scrubbed from the internet, but not before journalists and researchers had downloaded and analyzed them. The revelations forced the French government to admit for the first time that it had engaged in covert election interference, a practice it had long condemned in other countries. But not all accidental. Leaks are about grand conspiracies or secret experiments. Sometimes the files that slip out are simply embarrassing. Evidence of incompetence, corruption, or hypocrisy at the highest levels of government. In 2018, a trove of emails from a senior official in the Australian government was accidentally published on a public server. Emails revealed a pattern of backroom deals, conflicts of interest, and attempts to cover up scandals. The leak led to resignations, investigations, and a wave of public distrust in the government. What all these stories have in common is the same simple truth. Secrets are hard to keep. The more you try to hide, the more likely it is that something will slip through the cracks. In the digital age, where every file can be copied, shared, and archived in seconds, the risk of accidental leaks is higher than ever. As we'll see in the next section, sometimes the files that leak don't just expose the past. They reveal the future, offering a glimpse into the plans, projects, and ambitions that governments would do anything to keep hidden. Imagine waking up one morning to find that the future has been revealed. It's not by a whistleblower, not by a journalist, but by a simple mistake. That's exactly what happened in 2021. When a cache of classified documents from a major Western government was accidentally uploaded to a public-facing server. The files, intended for internal review, included detailed plans for the next decade of national security strategy, new weapons systems, cyber defense initiatives, and even contingency plans for responding to global crises. For a few brief hours, anyone with a web browser could access the files, download them, and share them with the world. The leak was discovered by a group of amateur researchers who routinely scan government websites for exposed data. At first, they thought they'd stumbled onto a routine policy document. But as they dug deeper, they realized they were looking at the blueprint for the country's entire future defense posture. The files included diagrams of next-generation fighter jets, specifications for hypersonic missiles, and even internal memos discussing the potential for artificial intelligence to revolutionize warfare. There were also chilling references to black projects, classified programs so secret that even their names were redacted. The government moved quickly to take the files offline, but the damage was done. Within hours, the documents had been mirrored on dozens of sites, analyzed by foreign intelligence agencies, and dissected by journalists around the world. The leak forced the government to accelerate some programs, cancel others, and launch a massive internal review of its cybersecurity practices. It also sparked a public debate about the risks of secrecy in the digital age. If even the most sensitive plans can be exposed by a simple mistake, how can we trust that our leaders are keeping us safe? But the accidental leak didn't just reveal military secrets. Buried among the technical documents were files discussing the government's plans for responding to pandemics, natural disasters, and even civil unrest. The files included models predicting the spread of infectious diseases, strategies for distributing vaccines, contingency plans for imposing lockdowns or curfews. There were also memos discussing the use of social media monitoring to track public sentiment and identify potential sources of dissent. For many, the leak was a wake-up call, a reminder that the future is being shaped behind closed doors, often without public input or oversight. The files revealed a world where governments are constantly preparing for the worst, building systems of control and surveillance that most citizens never see. And while some of these measures may be necessary, the accidental leak raised uncomfortable questions about transparency, accountability, and the balance between security and freedom. This wasn't the first time that plans for the future had been accidentally exposed. In 2010, a set of files from the Russian government was leaked online, revealing the country's ambitions to develop new forms of cyber warfare, artificial intelligence, and autonomous weapons. The documents included proposals for information dominance, strategies for disrupting foreign elections, and even plans for using deepfake technology to spread disinformation. The leak was a goldmine for foreign intelligence agencies, who pored over the files for clues about Russia's next moves. But perhaps the most unsettling revelation was a series of memos discussing the use of psychological operations, PSIEPs, to manipulate public opinion both at home and abroad. The files described experiments with social media bots, targeted advertising, and even the creation of fake news outlets to shape the narrative in Russia's favor. The leak forced the Russian government to admit, for the first time, that it was actively engaged in information warfare on a global scale. Sometimes, the files that leak are so far ahead of their time that they seem almost unbelievable. In 2016, a set of documents from a European space agency was accidentally published online, revealing plans for a new generation of satellites capable of real-time surveillance of the entire planet. The files included technical specifications, launch schedules, and even internal debates about the ethical implications of such pervasive monitoring. The leak sparked a fierce debate among scientists, policymakers, and privacy advocates, many of whom argued that the technology posed a grave threat to civil liberties. The agency quickly took the files offline and launched an internal investigation. But the genie was out of the bottle. The leak forced a public reckoning with the reality that, in the near future, privacy as we know it may be a thing of the past. The files also revealed the extent to which governments are willing to push the boundaries of technology in the name of security. It's the risks that come with keeping those ambitions secret. But not all accidental leaks are about grand plans or futuristic technology. Sometimes the files that slip out are simply a window into the day-to-day workings of government. The emails, memos, and reports that reveal how decisions are made. Who holds the real power, and what really goes on behind closed doors. In 2019, a trove of internal communications from a major intelligence agency was accidentally uploaded to a public server. The files included candid assessments of foreign leaders, internal debates about policy, even personal messages between senior officials. The leak was a rare glimpse into the human side of government. The rivalries, the egos, the moments of doubt and uncertainty. It also revealed the extent to which decisions that shape the world are often made in haste, under pressure, and with incomplete information. For many, the leak was a reminder that, behind the facade of power and authority, governments are made up of ordinary people, struggling to navigate a world that is more complex and unpredictable than ever. As we move into the next section, we'll explore some of the most bizarre and unexpected accidental leaks. Files that revealed secret projects, hidden agendas, and the strange, sometimes surreal world of government secrecy. If you think government secrets are all about spies, weapons, and war, think again. Some of the most jaw-dropping accidental leaks have revealed projects so strange, so outlandish, that they sound like the stuff of urban legends. Yet these files are real, briefly public, then scrubbed from the internet, but not before they left a permanent mark on our collective imagination. Take, for example, the infamous Project Stargate files. For years, rumors swirled about the U.S. government's interest in psychic phenomena, remote viewing, telekinesis, even attempts to communicate with extraterrestrials. Most people dismissed these stories as pure science fiction. But in the early 2000s, a batch of declassified CIA documents was accidentally uploaded to a public database without the usual redactions. Suddenly, anyone could read about government-funded experiments in psychic spying, including detailed accounts of viewers attempting to describe secret Soviet installations from thousands of miles away, using nothing but the power of their minds. The files included transcripts of sessions where participants described hidden objects, military bases, and even events in the future. Some of the results were eerily accurate. Others were laughably off base. But the fact that the government had spent millions of dollars on such research was enough to spark a media frenzy. The files were quickly taken down, but not before they were downloaded, mirrored, and dissected by researchers and conspiracy theorists alike. The accidental leak forced the CIA to admit that, yes, they had spent decades exploring the limits of human consciousness, and that, for a time, they believed psychic spies might give them an edge in the Cold War. But the world of accidental leaks gets even stranger. In 2018, a set of files from a European defense contractor was mistakenly posted to a public server. The documents detailed a secret project to develop non-lethal incapacitation devices, weapons designed to disable targets without causing permanent harm. Among the more conventional entries, stun guns, tear gas, and rubber bullets, were blueprints for devices that sounded like something out of a comic book. A sonic disruptor capable of causing nausea and disorientation at a distance. A microwave. Pain beam that could make skin feel like it was burning. And even a prototype for a vomit ray designed to incapacitate crowds with waves of intense discomfort. The files also included internal memos debating the ethics of such weapons, with some engineers warning that the long-term effects were unknown and potentially dangerous. The leak sparked a public outcry, with human rights groups demanding greater oversight of so-called non-lethal technologies. The contractor quickly removed the files and issued a statement blaming a technical error, but the damage was done. The world now knew that the line between science fiction and reality was thinner than anyone had imagined. Sometimes, the files that leak are so bizarre that even seasoned journalists have trouble believing they're real. In 2015, a cache of documents from a South American intelligence agency was accidentally published online. The files included surveillance reports, lists of informants, and evidence of covert operations. But the most shocking revelation was a set of files detailing the agency's investigation into reports of unidentified flying objects, UFOs, over military installations. The documents included photographs, radar data, and eyewitness accounts from pilots and soldiers who claimed to have seen strange lights, craft, and even humanoid figures near restricted airspace. Some of the reports were icily explained, weather balloons, drones, or atmospheric phenomena, but others defied explanation, and the agency's own analysts admitted they had no idea what they were dealing with. The leak reignited global interest in the UFO phenomenon and forced the government to admit, for the first time, that it took such reports seriously. But not all accidental leaks are about the strange and unexplained. Sometimes, the files that slip out reveal the mundane. Day-to-day reality of government secrecy, the endless paperwork, the bureaucratic infighting, constant struggle to keep secrets in a world where information wants to be free. In 2020, a trove of internal emails from a major Western intelligence agency was accidentally uploaded to a public server. The emails revealed a world of overworked analysts, frustrated managers, and constant pressure to do more with less. The leak included candid discussions about budget cuts, failed operations, and the challenges of keeping up with rapidly evolving technology. There were also moments of dark humor, jokes about the joys of redacting documents, complaints about outdated software, and even a few memes shared among colleagues. For many, the leak was a reminder that behind the cloak and dagger image, intelligence work is often just another job, one filled with stress, mistakes, and the occasional moment of levity. Yet, even these mundane leaks can have serious consequences. The emails included sensitive information about ongoing operations, the identities of undercover agents, and internal debates about policy. The agency was forced to launch a massive internal review, pull operatives out of the field, and overhaul its cybersecurity protocols. The leak also sparked a public debate about the risks of digital secrecy. If even the most secretive agencies can't keep their emails safe, what hope is there for the rest of us? As we move into the next section, we'll look at the human cost of accidental leaks. The careers destroyed, the lives upended, the lasting impact on the people caught in the crossfire of government secrecy and digital transparency. For every headline about a government leak, there are real people whose lives are changed forever. The files that slip out, sometimes with a single click, sometimes through a chain of small mistakes, can destroy careers and endanger lives, and leave a trail of chaos that lasts for years. The human cost of accidental leaks is often hidden behind the drama of the headlines, but for those caught in the crossfire, consequences are all too real. Consider the story of a mid-level analyst at a major intelligence agency, whose name was never meant to be public. In 2017, a routine internal report was accidentally attached to a public press release. The report included the analyst's name, contact information, and a summary of their work on a sensitive counterterrorism operation. Within hours, the analyst's identity was circulating on social media, picked up by foreign news outlets, and flagged by hostile intelligence services. The agency scrambled to contain the damage, but it was too late. The analysts and their family were forced into protective custody, their career in ruins, their life forever changed by a simple clerical error. This isn't an isolated case. In 2019, a spreadsheet containing the names and locations of undercover operatives was accidentally emailed to a group of journalists. The file was supposed to be a redacted version, but someone forgot to remove the sensitive data before hitting send. The journalists, realizing the gravity of what they'd received, immediately contacted the agency and agreed not to publish the information. But the damage was already done. The agency had to pull dozens of operatives out of the field, shut down ongoing operations, and launch a massive internal review. Some agents had to relocate their families, change their identities, and start new lives from scratch, all because of a single, avoidable mistake. The fallout from accidental leaks isn't limited to intelligence agencies. In 2018, a trove of files from a major police department was accidentally uploaded to a public server. The files included internal investigations, disciplinary records, and even the names of confidential informants. The leak sparked outrage in the community. with activists demanding accountability and police officials scrambling to explain how such sensitive information could be exposed. For the informants whose names were revealed, the consequences were immediate and terrifying. Some went into hiding, others faced threats or violence, and a few simply disappeared. But the human cost of leaks isn't always so dramatic. Sometimes, it's the slow erosion of trust, the constant fear of exposure, the knowledge that a single mistake could upend your life. For government employees, the pressure to keep secrets is immense. Every email, every file, every conversation is a potential risk. The digital age has made it easier than ever to share information, but it's also made it easier to make mistakes. A single misplaced file, a forgotten password, a moment of carelessness, and years of work can be undone in an instant. The psychological toll can be devastating. Whistleblowers and leakers often face intense scrutiny, legal threats, and public vilification. Even those who leak information accidentally can find themselves under investigation. Their motives questioned, their loyalty doubted. Careers are ruined, reputations destroyed, and families torn apart by the fallout. The fear of leaks can also create a culture of paranoia, where employees are afraid to speak up, share ideas, or challenge authority for fear of being accused of disloyalty. Yet for all the risks, accidental leaks have also played a crucial role in exposing wrongdoing, holding governments accountable, and forcing change. The files that slip out, whether by accident or design, revealed abuses of power, corruption, and cover-ups that would otherwise have remained hidden. They have sparked investigations, led to reforms, and given voice to those who would otherwise be silenced. In some cases, the people whose lives are upended by leaks become unlikely heroes, celebrated for their courage in the face of adversity. But the line between hero and villain is often blurred.